So MPs in Parliament may have voted against the Phala Phala panel report last Tuesday, but the party that launched the impeachment bid against the president is not done. I'm joined now by the president of the African Transformation Movement Party, Vuyo Zungula. Mr. Zungula, thank you so much for your time. So you believe that Parliament's open vote was actually illegal. My understanding is that the Speaker of the Parliament has the prerogative whether to go with an open or closed vote. Explain to me what you think your case is.
Firstly, Sally, the Speaker asked parties to express what are the exceptional circumstances that warrant the vote to be done by means of a secret ballot. Now, the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled on the matter. You recall that as the ATM, we've challenged the issue of the secret ballot up until the SCA level. And the SCA ruled that the Speaker should not ask the parties to basically convince the Speaker as to what are the exceptional circumstances. Rather, the Speaker should ask a question as to what is the best way to vote to enforce accountability on a particular issue. Now, the Speaker, in our view, has erred by asking the parties to demonstrate the exceptional circumstances. Therefore, if the test of the Speaker was wrong in the sense that she asked the parties to demonstrate the exceptional circumstances, it means the decision not to grant a secret ballot or the decision to vote via an open ballot system is incorrect. Therefore, in our view, it is irrational and unlawful. The second issue that we've gone to court for was to say the decision taken by the National Assembly to block an inquiry. What people don't understand that last week we're not voting to impeach the president. We're voting to set up an inquiry that would investigate whether the president has done wrongdoing or not. And currently there is a report from an independent panel of experts. This report is stating that Parliament must investigate, or the National Assembly must investigate or may investigate the possible wrongdoing by the president. Therefore, the decision by the National Assembly not to proceed with an inquiry, that decision was irrational because it goes against the constitutional obligation of the National Assembly of oversight and accountability over the executive.
All right, so there's two issues I want to just get clarity on you. You said that because the Speaker actually asked parties if there were exceptional circumstances to warrant an open vote, she went about it the wrong way, and what she had to consider is what is the best way to get the fairest result. Am I paraphrasing it correctly? How do you know that she didn't do both? I mean, she could have asked for input, but ultimately she could have been seized with that very question you say she didn't consider.
In the responses of the Speaker, both in the programming committee and the letters to the various parties, what she stressed the most was that the parties did not demonstrate exceptional circumstances to warrant a secret ballot. And the other issue is the Speaker relied on her interpretation that the default position is an open ballot, whereas the SCA ruled that that is not the case. And the open ballot system as a method of voting is not the default position. Therefore, it is not a must that parties must demonstrate or must convince the Speaker to move away on her so-called default position, which is the open ballot to a closed ballot system. So that is why we are arguing that her methodology of arriving to the decision she took of granting an open ballot was wrong. Therefore, that decision was irrational.
I see what your argument is, but doesn't she ultimately have the prerogative, even if her working out how she gets there is perhaps flawed? Isn't it ultimately her say, or not always?
The Speaker, yes, does have the prerogative, but it is not a personal, choice on the matter. It is a choice or a decision she needs to take into account what is in the best interest of the people. The powers that are given to public representatives, including legislatures, they are not personal. They belong to the people, and the people in those positions, such as the Speaker, need to apply their minds and they need to take rational decisions, particularly when there are previous court rulings that guide the Speaker as to which decision is the best under the particular circumstances.
Okay, I hear where you're coming from. The other thing you said is that a lot of people don't understand, and you're quite right, that this report came from three highly placed, independent lawyers, and they looked at the evidence, and what the evidence is really are two different sets of hearsay, which the panel review made very clear. They said we're comparing stories here, and on the face of it, we think there's something here to move forward with and delve deeper into. I mean, that's my reading of that report. And you're quite right, a lot of people thought that the vote was saying, no, he mustn't be impeached or whatever. You know, the question was, do we go to the next step, which was not to impeach or not to impeach? It was to set up this committee, which would have had the powers to pull people before it, to do cross-examination, etc., etc. You said something, though, at the end, though, and you sort of said that, maybe I misheard you, that this report essentially found that the inquiry has to move to the next step in Parliament. If that is indeed the case, there wouldn't have been need for a vote. And in terms of how this process has to work, this process does need a vote. And ultimately, whether you agree with it or not, most of the MPs said no.
The MPs took an irrational decision, which in our view is unlawful. You'll recall previously there was also a decision that MPs in the Nkandla matter took. They took a decision that the former President Zuma, could not be held liable or did not benefit from the Nkandla upgrades. Now, when that was tested in terms of rationality and the principles of law, what the judges said in the Constitutional Court that the MPs or the National Assembly took an irrational decision, and basically they failed in their duty of oversight and accountability over the executive. Therefore, even if members of Parliament in their majority take a decision, that decision has to be tested in law, has to be tested with the Constitution. And that is what we are saying, that there is an independent panel which was instituted by Parliament. Now, this independent panel, effectively, it is saying there is something to look via an impeachment committee. Hence, it says the president may have committed wrongdoing. Now, it is in the rules of the Parliament that the independent panel would not dictate to Parliament, because that is not how it set up. That is not how it gives its recommendation. It will say in their recommendations the president may have committed. Therefore, that is enough information or enough for Parliament to say, now that the panel is saying there may be wrongdoing, now any rational Parliament or National Assembly will further probe the matter further with an impeachment committee. And by Parliament or National Assembly deciding against that particular direction, it means it has been blocking oversight, in other words, failing in its constitutional mandate of holding the executive accountable.
And are those the same arguments you're going to be using to actually get the vote result nullified? Is that the argument you've just explained to me? You're going to say that basically that the vote result was an irrational one if you read it with the report. Okay, I see. The other thing you're doing in terms of legal action is that you're actually opposing the President's application to review the Phala Phala report at the Constitutional Court. Give me the latest on that process.
At the moment, we've not heard anything from the court. However, what we want to stress on that particular court action is that, firstly, the president cited an individual MP as one of the respondents. Secondly, we as the ATM, we believe that that action by the president to want to stop, an inquiry actually shows that he's not genuine when he's speaking about him subjecting himself to whatever process, because that report, firstly, it is not an administrative decision. The decision that the president would have reviewed if he was on the right side of the law would have been the decision taken by the National Assembly, not a report that is not an administrative decision. And secondly, the rules of Parliament are clear on the process and the methodology that was used by that independent panel. And lastly, the president was afforded ample opportunity to respond to all of the evidence that was provided to the panel, and including the rules of the impeachment. He did not take an issue. He only takes an issue after the findings do not suit him. Hence, we find in our view that he is not genuine when it comes to taking that particular report on review.
So one of the things we heard after the vote last Tuesday that said, you know, that the result of the vote, obviously, that this Phala Phala report shouldn't move to the next stage of establishing an impeachment committee, is that review application is essentially moot because, you know, the report's going to go nowhere else in Parliament. Wouldn't you welcome, actually, the Constitutional Court to delve into it? Because it'd be interesting to get another set of legal minds reviewing this particular report. Wouldn't that either validate the MPs who voted against it, or validate people such as yourself who said, actually, if you look at the law, this should proceed? Wouldn't it be welcomed by you that the Constitutional Court actually does proceed and have a look at it?
We would like that very much. Basically, what the president is saying, he's saying this report must be set aside, blah, blah, blah. On our side, we are saying that there's nothing in law that is wrong with that report. There's nothing that should make that report to be set aside. Therefore, in the constitutional process, what's going to be happening is that the president will seek to convince the judges that that report must be set aside. On our side, we are going to convince the judges that that report, in actual sense, it is correct, and Parliament must look into the matter further. So we are not just opposing to say, let it not go to court. We are opposing what the president wants, which is he wants that report to be said or to be declared as an unlawful and invalid report.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. President of the African Transformation Movement Party, Vuyo Zungula, and they are continuing with their efforts through the parliamentary process. Of course, we know that it is halted, but there is now court action to move more deeply into that Phala Phala report and Parliament's response to it.